Good morning. In 1954, Senator Joseph McCarthy was the chief counsel during the Army-McCarthy hearings in the U.S. Senate and was investigating in Hollywood and New York City theaters for suspecting communists who were directors, actors, actresses, and even playwrights. And if so they were, then they would be kicked out of their careers. Marvin Porter happened to be an uprising new playwright in Brooklyn. And unfortunately, he was one of those so-called communists. And Senator Joseph McCarthy and lawyer Roy Cohn kicked him out of his playwright career. Later on in his life, Roy Cohn happened to be Donald Trump's lawyer in the early 1980s. And Roy taught all of his tricks over to Trump. And Marvin Porter in 1963, he was in a small apartment, all alone, and having only one brother, and he hadn't spoken to his mother ever since Roy Cohn and Senator McCarthy kicked him out of being a playwright and ruined his life. Sammy is wearing a colorful dress with a hemline showing her knees. Baxter comes out of the kitchen, and when seeing her, he is speechless.
Hello, Marvin.
Hello.
Your dining table is lovely.
It is? What he means to say is you're quite tasteful when seeing excellence, don't you, Marvin? I suppose. Well, why don't you two sit and be comfortable? Sammy, sit here, and Marvin, take the other chair. I hope you have an appetite, Sammy, because it is absolutely delicious. Oh, off to the kitchen I go, and I certainly hope your rehearsal today went wonderfully.
Thank you. We are struggling with our lines because the playwright keeps editing here and there, but we're making progress, I guess.
That is good to hear. Excuse me. Baxter enters the kitchen, leaving Marvin and Sammy sitting quietly. Romantic violin music is heard from the kitchen at low volume.
Oh my, and music too.
Yes, it's a surprise.
Do you often dine like this?
Not really. It was Baxter's idea. Baxter enters and he lights the candles on the table. Would you care to have a glass of wine before I serve your dinner?
After today's rehearsal, I would love some, thank you.
Baxter picks up the wine bottle and pours it into their glasses. Marvin looks like a frightened man in a fire looking for the exit door. I hope you enjoy the music. Where did it come from? I purchased a small record player and disc at Bertle's music store, and it was only half the original price.
That sounds thrifty, don't you think, Marvin?
I suppose. His descriptions are usually not lengthy for being a writer. Well, I will leave you now to talk a bit and get to know each other better. Just holler if you need me. Baxter enters into the kitchen, and Marvin and Sammy sit quietly sipping their wine. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here.
You are?
Why shouldn't I be?
We hardly know each other, especially after having our confrontation the other day.
Did you forget we're supposed to be good neighbors now?
No, I haven't forgotten that, but it seems strange somehow, don't you think?
I suppose it is. Do I make you feel uncomfortable?
No, well, just a little, I guess.
Why?
I, I have to be honest too, you.
And what would that be?
It has been 8 years since dining with a woman.
Oh, that long?
Yes.
Well, then I'm honored.
You are?
Yes. It's not often meeting men who are not afraid to be honest.
Baxter enters carrying 2 dinner plates on a tray. Hot off the stove, and I don't want to see any crumbs left on your plates.
It looks delicious.
I'm waiting for my compliment, Marvin. I've never seen a plate of food like this before. Is that a compliment or a criticism?
I think he sees neither, and he is only overwhelmed.
Well, she came to your rescue, and I'll leave it just like that. There is a knock on the front door, and Baxter opens it and sees George standing there. Oh, and who might that be? Is Marvin here? Yes. Hello, George. Come in. George enters. What is it, George? I didn't mean to intrude, but I need a favor. What? I need help bringing Mother's new bed into Siddy's home. As you can see, I'm having a dinner. May I enter this discussion? I will help you, George. It's heavy. Are you sure? I don't exactly have spaghetti strings for muscles, and I'm stronger than you might think. Well, if you're up for it, let's go then, and get it over with. Rightio. Marvin, if you both want second servings, I put it in the oven. What are you eating? Ask Baxter. It's his creation. I'll be happy to, but let's be off, George, and I'll tell you the recipe while we go down the stairway. It is a popular dish of truffle bay scallops with celery puree, and you first take fresh green celery stalks, long and firm, and chop them carefully at the very same length to make them all looking wonderfully balanced in the puree sauce. Marvin and Sammy looked down at their plates.
Let me take a bite first.
Sammy takes a fork and takes a bite. Well?
It does look delicious, but it is a little salty. With a sip of wine, it will be quite tasty, actually.
You're braver than I.
Why haven't you gotten out much? It's fun eating new foods and going to different restaurants.
Sammy takes steady bites while Marvin pushes the food on his plate with his fork. I once had an accident.
How?
I was standing on the Brooklyn Bridge on a rainy night, and I slipped and hit my head against the metal railing.
Were you injured?
At first, I stood up and didn't see any blood, so I felt I was lucky, and 2 days later I went to the hospital, and the doctors told me that I had broken 2 vertebrae discs in my neck.
Oh. Were you able to walk?
My legs weren't injured, and I could walk, but I didn't see what was coming my way, and soon a flood of horrible symptoms attacked my neck and head.
Do you mind me asking what your symptoms were?
I had phobias that I never knew existed. acrophobia that kept me from climbing to heights, and aerophobia keeping me from traveling on commercial flights, and claustrophobia had me fearful when being alone, and what kept me sequestered here from crowded spaces was claustrophobia.
Oh, even now?
Yes, yeah. A few of the phobias eventually went away, but I've learned to go above the pain of the others that stayed.
Well, wouldn't an operation help?
The doctors told me that my injury was inoperative, and I would just have to do my best to cope with the pain and the fears.
Well, are you afraid of being here?
Marvin looks at Sammy and studies in her eyes.
I once had vertigo when I was younger, when my ears became infected. I clearly remember the discomfort I had then. I couldn't walk or stand, and I was terribly frightened that I would have to live like this for the rest of my life. I would lay in bed and cry because I wasn't able to play with my friends anymore. I soon started reading books and imagining what my life would be like if I was healthy once more. I was alone and not like others, and it was only me knowing what I was going through. What I did learn, though, was who I truly was. I saw things in a different way that others didn't, and I promised to myself if I ever walked again, I would do something special for others. And that date did come when I walked again and became an actress standing on the theater stage.
Well, you walked as straight as an arrow now.
Yes, and I know a little of what you must be going through. Why were you on the Brooklyn Bridge in the rain that night?
Marvin looks down and he takes a deep breath. I was drunk. Not just drunk, but overly drunk. I can't really remember why I got out of the taxi on the bridge. It was my opening night for my new play I wrote.
You wrote a play?
Yes, many plays. It was my new play, Raindrops Upside Down, and I meant for it to be a comedy, but overnight it turned into a drama. Audiences always have the last word, and I was greatly depressed that night.
Why were you depressed? Did they not applaud?
Oh, on the contrary, it was a roaring applause from the audience. But that wasn't the problem I felt.
Well, what was it?
It had nothing to do with the play, but it was what the producer said to me in the backstage wings as the audience was frantically clapping.
What did the producer say?
He said my name was in the newspapers, and the theater was closing down my production after the opening night.
Why?
My name was printed alongside other writers and directors who were accused of being communists. You probably don't know anything about Senator McCarthy's investigation in 1955 when he was forcing American actors, writers, and directors out of work in motion pictures and theater stages. I happened to be one of those who got the boot. The theater owner didn't want to have protesters holding signs outside his theater box office screaming, "It's a communist play and communist playwright."
They can't do that in America. What about your freedom, laws, and your defense? Didn't anyone defend you?
No one came to my rescue. I couldn't even get a high school drama class to stage any of my plays after that.
Were you a communist?
No, but I did once go to a communist meeting with a friend of mine, and later on, my name came up in the Foley Square trial in 1949. I wasn't a communist then or now.
Well, how did the McCarthy investigation get your name and information?
The FBI already knew my name from the Foley Square trial, and later on they knocked on my mother's door looking for me, and they asked her questions regarding my past involvement with the Communist Party.
Well, what did she say?
She apparently let them into her home, and she gave them coffee and cookies while telling them everything I had shared to her about that night when I went to the communist meeting hall. One thing and another led my name being funneled up in the line into the McCarthy investigation, and my name was put in black ink in the newspapers in 1955.
She surely must have not known what had happened to you. She couldn't have, could she?
But she did, and my career was over. I walked out of the theater that night, hearing the applause, knowing the theater doors had shut my Raindrops Upside Down production forever. I didn't have an umbrella, and I whistled down a taxi that rainy night. All the rest is a fog to me, and it changed my entire life.
With you being closed up in your apartment isn't the kind of life you should want. You know that. I can see it in your eyes. Would you like a little more wine? Because I do.
I suppose.
Will you do me a favor?
Sure, what?
Promise me you won't ever say, "I suppose" again. It's a meaningless thing to say, and I know you have stronger opinions than that.
I'll try.
Good. I will hold you to it, Mr. Porter. Now, how do we get you out of your apartment?
Why?
You don't want to be stuffed in your apartment for the rest of your life, do you?
I feel safer here.
You're not going to let a little phobia rob you of adventures outside.
I don't look it that way.
How do you look at it?
I don't trust people.
Why?
I don't know.
I think you do.
But I don't. I've fought over these last 8 years, and I haven't found any resolves, not one.
You were hurt, Marvin, terribly hurt, and you had no one to help you. You lost confidence in others. Isn't that the real reason you have sheltered yourself in here? You do know it, but you only don't want to face the horrible pain you had on the Brooklyn Bridge that night, isn't it? You don't want to be hurt again, isn't that right?
I lost everything that night. There was no one to take my hand and pat me on my back. I was alone, and my career was stripped from me. I tried to bring it back, but it kept slipping away from me somehow. I finally just gave up. I didn't know where to go. I boarded everyone out of my life here because I didn't ever want to ever be hurt again by people I loved.
Is that why you pushed your mother away from you?
Especially my mother. And she couldn't save me from my pains.
She didn't know, Marvin. She couldn't stop what was happening to you. No one could. You need to let go of your pain because that is what's holding you down from living a happy life again. I want you to take a walk with me.
I can't.
Yes, you can. We're going to walk down that street of your neighborhood and look up into the sky and see the stars with the wind blowing in your hair, Marvin. That is what we're going to do. You need to be brave, and I won't let go of you because we will be hand in hand together. Is that okay with you, Marvin? Get your jacket and I'll get mine because we're taking a walk together, and I know you will love it, Marvin. I promise you.
Marvin goes into his bedroom and comes out wearing a jacket and prepares to exit. Marvin looks over at the table. What about the food in the oven?
It's not going anywhere. Don't worry about it. There's a park close by with bright street lights radiating upon the trees, making them look magical. Do you feel all right?
I suppose.
You can't say that, remember?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
Marvin moves to the front door and opens it wide. You go first and lead the way. Sammy walks through the doorway, and Marvin follows her and shuts the door.